Taylor's got her touring revenue and her brand deals. Travis Kelce's got his NFL contracts and his endorsement deals. And then, Chris, this is interesting. For celebrities, the NIL, name, image, and likeness, that's very important. So the prenup's going to specify, like, the marriage can't be on the rocks, and Travis Kelce's podcast is no longer that popular and he's no longer playing football. He can't start like exploiting Taylor Swift's name, image, and likeness as a side hustle, right? So there's going to be some stuff in there about that.
That makes sense.
Welcome to episode 85 of the Weekly Docket, a podcast by the Silberman Law Firm. Today is August 28th, 2025. I'm Phil Silberman, owner of the firm, and I'm joined by Chris Heald, who is our firm's supervising attorney. Chris, what do you think about all this international expansion for football? We had Kansas versus Iowa State in Dublin, and then the NFL this year going to have games in Sao Paulo, Dublin, London, Madrid, and Berlin. Like the expansion of American football, or you think that's going to be a bust?
They keep trying it. They're going to keep trying. I like that I can wake up at 8:30 in the morning and watch international games, so I can literally watch 16 hours of football during the day. I don't hate that.
I was shocked to see that one of the first college games ever played internationally was in 1988. So they've been doing this for a while. And the NFL is obviously a money thing. They're looking for any kind of expansion they can get. Do you think the Europeans get it? How do they pick out how do they decide which team they're going to root for?
I think if you watch the London games, people wearing like every team's jersey. And I don't know if you remember this in the 90s, they had NFL Europe. And I don't know if any of the former pros went over there, but I definitely remember Germany had a team, the Rhine Fire. I definitely remember that team. And I think there were 6 or 8 teams throughout Europe, and it just didn't do that well. They like soccer for the same reasons we hate soccer.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's a novelty. If you just have one game a year, the people will turn out. If you start giving them too many games, I don't think it's going to be supported. That's just my hot take on it. But we did not come to do the show today, Chris, to talk football. So what we are going to talk about, what is on our docket today, we're going to talk about which is actually football, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce getting engaged. But the angle we're going to take on it is what the prenuptial agreement might look like. And I think that's going to be pretty interesting to speculate on the prenup for some of these A-list celebrities. And then in our legal question section, we are going to discuss, what do you do when you can't find the heirs for probate? How do you handle that? And then finally, in our rant and rave section, my favorite part of the show, filing motions on Friday afternoon. Love it, hate it. Do you do it? Chris probably does it. Don't give it away. We're going to talk about that a little bit. All right, let's go ahead and kick it off with our legal news section. And this is Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. They got engaged. Yay. It's a good thing, I guess. But the prenuptial agreement, Chris, we don't practice family law. Interestingly, we do a lot of postnuptial agreements. We call them partition and exchange agreements. Why don't we do prenups, Chris? Is that just because it's a family law thing?
I've done a couple. I think people just don't find us. I also think people don't like prenups. I don't know. I'm not, like you say, we're not family lawyers, so I don't know what percentage of people do prenups, but they do find themselves in situations where they didn't realize what the community property effects are in the state. And so if they're trying to deal with property and they say, oh, I didn't realize this was community property, we do partition agreements where the couple say, okay, what we're going to do, we agree to this, and they have their reasons. And it's not necessarily in contemplation of a divorce. It's just so that they can practically deal with what they need to deal with.
Yeah. Taylor Swift worth about $1.6 billion. Travis Kelce only worth $90 million. So he's a pauper, Chris. What these prenuptial agreements going to do is it's going to specify what belongs to who, and it's going to help avoid a messy divorce. Nobody wants the divorce. But the big thing in Texas, at least, but many places, not many places, I think 9 other states are community property states, Chris, but Texas, we're a community property state. And income from separate property is community property. So if you own a rental home prior to getting married, and then you get married, the rental income from that rental home all of a sudden becomes community property. So if Taylor Swift owns vast types of assets, any kind of income thrown off from that is going to be potentially community property if they decide to reside in a community property state, which I don't know that they will.
They probably don't.
Yeah. Yeah, they have all kinds of assets. Taylor's got her touring revenue and her brand deals. Travis Kelce's got his NFL contracts and his endorsement deals. And then, Chris, this is interesting. For celebrities, the NIL, name, image, and likeness, that's very important. So the prenup's going to specify, like, the marriage can't be on the rocks, and Travis Kelce's podcast is no longer that popular and he's no longer playing football. He can't start like exploiting Taylor Swift's name, image, and likeness as a side hustle, right? So there's going to be some stuff in there about that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think prenups get a really bad rap. Ever since becoming an attorney, when we were all young kids before we all got married, we used to talk about it. And a lot of people say, oh, that's terrible. You would only do that if you don't believe in the marriage. Or, oh, that's so unfair to women. The only reason you would do it as a man is if you want to screw the woman out of what she's rightfully entitled to. And that's not to say people don't misuse prenups or pressure people into signing prenups they maybe shouldn't, but it doesn't actually have to be that way. You could have a prenup that does exactly what you said at the beginning, which is all you're doing is saying, if we should end up in divorce, we want to decide today, while we love each other, how we're going to do it so that we don't fight over it later. And it doesn't have to be the poorer person, in this case, the man, gets nothing and he gets tossed out cold. It can be what Taylor makes is Taylor's, what Travis makes is Travis's. We're not going to fight over it. Or if one of them stays home and takes care of kids, we say, look, if they give up their career, they're going to be compensated for it X amount of dollars for X amount of years. And we just agree to it and it's done. That way there's no, oh, this person got the short end of the stick. So I think they're always a good idea, whether you have money or not, because again, just to go back to what you said, it's a way of putting together the framework for people to resolve a problem at a time when they're in good place to resolve a problem rather than at the time when they're in a very bad place and not in the best situation to resolve the problem.
And that's so important for all areas of the law, whether you're talking about family law and prenuptial agreements, or whether you're just talking about a business deal where you're going into some sort of partnership or an operating agreement. The time to specify the terms of the partnership is at the beginning. And this idea of, oh, if you weren't having this prenup or you want to heavily negotiate this operating agreement, that means you don't really have good faith about this business venture or this marriage. That's really not necessarily true. It's just a appropriate and very smart thing to do. Now, I did not have anything when I got married, so there was no point in any kind of prenuptial agreements.
But I would argue that the people who are smart enough to do that probably have the best marriages and the best business relationships because they're rational and they think about it and they say, hey, look, we're great business partners today. We're in love today. But we may not be someday. Same with estates. We do that in estates all the time. Hey, if everybody's in agreement today, let's capitalize on what everybody is in agreement on today before something goes awry later.
Yeah.
It makes good sense.
Yeah. And final thing I want to mention, and this was also very interesting to me, is confidentiality agreements. Non-disclosure agreements are very important in these type of A-list celebrity prenuptial agreements because Taylor's brand is about being a pop star. So if there are certain things that we as humans all do, we all have problems and issues and things that are a little bit you want to keep private. You don't want to ruin that brand. Travis Kelce, they don't want to have a marriage again that's getting into trouble. And all of a sudden Travis Kelce starts saying things about Taylor Swift's bathroom habits or something like that. You're going to have some confidentiality agreements as part of that deal, especially when you're trying to keep up the image of a pop star. Yeah, so pretty cool stuff. I think as lawyers, we always like to maybe talk about the thing that everyone is not talking about, which is the legal component of this relationship. But it's going to happen. They're going to have one. So pretty comfortable with that prediction.
I should certainly hope so.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our legal questions section. And the question we're answering today is, what do you do when you can't find heirs for a probate? Chris, give us some examples. You're really a probate guy when it comes down to it. What are some examples of when you may need to find heirs in the probate process?
You need to find heirs anytime someone dies without a will. And that
Mhm.
can be pretty challenging sometimes, especially as people get up in age, blended families a lot. Stepdad dies, mom's kids are trying to take care of mom and get all of stepdad's estate over to mom or was entitled to. But it turns out stepdad had kids that no one ever talked about and they don't really know them and they're a completely different side of the family. And so I would say that's the most common situation where they say, I just don't know them. Our parents got married when we were all adults, didn't grow up with that side of the family. They could be in jail. They could be in California. They could be dead. We really have a clue.
Yeah. And we're able to do a lot of basic stuff when it comes to finding errors. I say basic, I'm not talking about, we have a lot more tools than the regular person has. We have some databases that we use, primarily people search through Westlaw. The way I usually find people, Chris, and you can tell me if you have any tips, is I'll do the people search and I'll go straight to the vehicle records because people are usually registering their vehicle every year. So you're going to get a hit on an address if they own or lease a vehicle. Anything you do to find people that you can think of?
That's usually where we start. And if we need, our process servers have skip tracing capabilities that they can try to find people for us. Otherwise, last resort is hiring a genealogist to actually
Yeah.
go out there, go online and try to find the records and then figure out who these people are and then track them down. Because it's one thing if you know their names. Sometimes they don't even know their names. Sometimes it's, yeah, I know dad had some kids, but Bud. We don't know Bud's name.
Yeah, or it really can be that sort of vague at times. One of the attorneys in the communication space at our firm brought this up. She mentioned private investigators. This was interesting. There's this one PI she found specialized in finding errors, and they often have access to more databases than we do. They're less expensive and more experienced with the field work stuff. If you have an estranged heir out there, maybe the person's never hasn't owned a vehicle, doesn't have an apartment, and they could be living on the street. So the PI, they'll go and go to the homeless shelters and they'll beat the streets asking people under bridges. They know how to do stuff like that. They interview people. They check local shelters and food banks and things like that to find people. If you are going to hire a PI, be sure they're licensed in Texas. They're actually licensed by the Texas Department of Public Safety. It's a private security bureau license. That's finding heirs.
The good thing, and people will say I can't find them. Where I tell them to start, because we're old now, you and I are very much officially old. We used to think Facebook was the coolest social thing, but now Facebook is all old people. But it's very helpful for contacting people you haven't talked to, and you just say, "Hey, do you know where this cousin is?" And you put
Yeah.
out the APB, and someone comes back to you and says, "Yeah, they know they live over here," or something like that. Um,
Yeah. That's
we
the
haven't been
face.
able to serve people on Facebook. We use technology. Social media still has a purpose. I know it's not the hip cool thing anymore, but us old people, at least we invented something new.
Let me know when we start serving people via Snapchat. That's going to be
Oh goodness.
my
We do
dad's.
email and Facebook,
No,
Snapchat.
we're moving on in the world, Chris. We're serving people on Snapchat now.
Oh my God.
We're cutting edge. All right, that brings us to our rant and rave section, best part of the show because I get to complain about stuff, or I get to say I get to kvetch about stuff. So some lawyers are notorious for filing all of their motions on Friday afternoon. And if you don't practice law, I guess you don't empathize with this as much, but if you're a litigator and you've got a case going, you might want to, okay, you've got everything ready. And then the idea is you're going to ruin opposing counsel's weekend by filing on Friday afternoon. Chris, what do you think? Hate it? Does it matter? What's your opinion on it?
It mattered to me when I was much younger and I was a young attorney and I had a very heavy litigation docket, and some of these attorneys would file 50-page motions on me. In my older age, I've come to learn I don't actually need to read it, so I typically don't. I just put it on, shelve it till Monday because nothing's going to happen over the weekend. I calendar my deadline if I have a response deadline, and then I
Mhm.
just put it aside until Monday. But it definitely happens. We certainly do it. I don't think it's not as intentional.
Intentional. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is I've got to get this done this week, and then you come to Friday and you're like, no, I'm getting this done today. Not leaving it for the weekend. It's getting out. And so
Yeah.
that contributes to it.
And if you're not a litigator and you're not practicing, if you take an example like a motion for summary judgment, if you file that motion, okay, fine, you filed the motion, but it's really the setting the hearing where the days start ticking. And the soonest the hearing can be set is 21 days after they got the motion. And then that means if you have to file a response, your response is going to be due 7 days. So in theory, you still have about 14 days to get a response on file. So it's not like getting it on Friday is the worst thing in the world. And Chris is taking a very mature approach to it. Is like, hey, I'm not going to work this weekend. I don't need to look at it. I don't need to let this kind of control me and think about it all weekend. I guess the only real advantage of filing on Friday is you do take, assuming the other attorney's not working, you do take 2 days away from, right? So
truthfully, I do the same thing with emails as well. If I get an email, even late at night or 6 o'clock, and I know it's like, there's just no point. I know I'm going back and forth with this guy and I'm not going to know what he says. I can put it on the back burner till the next morning.
Yeah, let's wait. If you're don't ever open, generally just don't open emails at night, or if you're not going to work on the weekend. I thought when Elon Musk was at Doge, he did have a pretty cool concept though. He was like, working on the weekend is a superpower because nobody else in the government works on weekends. So when he was trying to get stuff done, he was doing a lot of weekend work. I don't know if that really holds true if you're a litigator in Texas. Yeah, maybe you have to work some weekends, but that's a very long, arduous journey of a 30, 40-year career if you're working every weekend. Yeah, so
I encourage working weekends.
Okay, especially for our attorneys that need to bill more hours.
I do. And at my old firm, when we had offices, like we would know when people were in the office, and especially if the boss was in the office, you'd see everybody come into the office. But if I start getting emails from associates and I know that there are multiple associates working on Saturday, I'm going to go into work mode. I'm going to go into, okay, if my people are working, I'm going to start working.
There you go. You got to lead by example. All right. That brings our show to a close. I've been your host, Phil Silverman. Chris has been my co-host. Like us, follow us, review us wherever you get your podcast. And as a reminder, nothing in this show is to be considered legal advice. And this has all been for entertainment purposes only. If you have a legal question, email us at info@silblawfirm.com. That's info@silblawfirm.com. Tell us you want it publicly answered in the podcast. Everybody have a great rest of your week and weekend.